Hi guys, my name is Mitchell Workman. I am here to talk to you today about the history of the film industry, more specifically the last 50 years of the film industry. I think it's really important to talk about films and their history because it is such an emerging topic. It is always growing, it's always changing, it's always expanding, and we are all moviegoers, we all watch movies, we are all susceptible to what is shown to us on the screen. So I think it's really important to know what has been shown in the past and what is continuing to be shown in the present and into the future. To start with the 1950s, the 1950s was after the World War II, it was after Pearl Harbor, so the 1950s in general sparked a great shift in the American culture as well as the film industry. By 1950, over 10 million homes had television sets in their house. This introduction of television sets and advances in music and new societal trends led to what we know today as pop culture. And this rise in the pop culture shift of the 1950s created change in the 1960s film industry's target market. Producers started targeting the American youth. You saw movies that idealized portrayals of intense characters with tales of rebellion and rock and roll. This era also saw the first rise of young celebrity movie stars like James Dean, Ava Gardner, Marilyn Monroe. I think this point in the film industry is a really big point in time because you had all of America's youth looking at these people on screen, copying their actions, copying what they do, and it was just such an influence on America's youth and culture. And so after the 60s, the American film industry was kind of in a rough and shaky place. It was the Vietnam War, so you didn't have a lot going on in movie making. However, you did see a small rush of creativity in the film industry with directors like Martin Scorsese and actors like Robert De Niro, who pumped out movies like The Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver. Also noted in this era is a big advance in special effects. And you saw this big with George Lucas's film Star Wars or Steven Spielberg's Jaws, and even led into movies like Indiana Jones and things like that. Now in the creativity of the 70s, it didn't seem to transcend into the 80s. The producers designed these movies only for audience appeal, and most features from the 80s will hardly be remembered as classics. We did see some big budgeted, big name action movies that kind of followed from the 70s. You saw things like Terminator, Blade Runner, Indiana Jones, which brought in movie stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford, who sparked the big changes in the 90s and 2000s. And then once the 90s did came, producers and filmmakers tried to capitalize on what the 80s did best. So they marketed big budgeted, high action, high octane films, especially sparked the start of the superhero genre, with the films like the Batman franchise starring George Clooney or Val Kilmer, with big name stars like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. It really sparked an era in movie following, and so they would be able to keep making movies because they knew they already had a following, they already had people who would go and pay to see their movie. So ever since then, we have just been expanding. In the late 90s, early 2000s, you can see very targeted, highly at big budget, high action, high octane, high CGI films. They rule the box office, they rule the 2000s, they rule the 2010s. Especially the superhero genre. You have Marvel, you have movies like Iron Man, you have movies like Thor, you have movies like Captain America. Also things sparking like the digital age. You can things like Netflix, streaming on your home computer, cable TV on your computer, Hulu. You have all these things so readily at your disposal, but it is always changing and it is always growing, and we really do need to be prepared for what comes next.